Hello. Before we get started, there's just a few things I wanted to go over. First of all, this fic is like 80% smut. So minors, please do not interact with this. That said, most, if not all, of the smut is BDSM related. I will say it is almost all very healthy BDSM with the rules and the consent and everything else, but there is mentions of past abuse and past situations. So please be aware of that before you listen. But with that said, let's get started. Atelier, Bloom Street. Written by Succulent Nurturer. Chapter 1. Welcome to Atelier. Remus POV. A knock on the office door snapped Remus out of his reverie, and he sighed, running a scarred hand through his hair, yanking at the tangles, catching on his fingers. Pushing back from the desk, he stood to open the door. Sorry, I was done changing a while ago. I was caught up in the books. Gesturing for his business partner to enter their shared office space, he sank back into his desk chair with a world-weary sigh, his head aching from the jumble of numbers laid out on his desk. Do you see what I was talking about? Lily asked, meandering to her own desk, directly across from his, and sinking into the plush leather. Mr. Collins reckons we can afford another full-time bartender, and I think now is the time to finally try serving food in the evenings. Right, but can we afford that as well? Remus asked, glancing up to see Lily staring at him with a raised brow. I know that the profit margins are strong, and we are well established. But a chef is going to be, what, another $40,000 a year? Plus the cost of getting the kitchen back up to scratch and materials. Okay, Lily started, taking out a notebook and pen and quickly making some notes he couldn't see. So what if I take on the cost of the chef for the first 3 months? We've been saying we'll get the kitchen up and going for the last 2 years anyway. At most, that'll cost $10,000-15,000 maybe. We'll need to get a couple of inspections done. We'll have to buy a new fridge and range, but the fryer, the countertops, and the pot wash area are all clean and usable. If we're not profitable in 6 months, then we scrap it. But I don't think the initial cost should smother the idea. Lips twitching, Remus knew he was caught. The whole reason that their business was so successful in the first place was Lily's intuition. After meeting at university and becoming fast friends, they had discovered a mutual interest in BDSM and their shared dismay over a lack of safe kink clubs in Britain. Studying business, they were both well positioned to be one of the first. The only problem was a lack of funds. So, they had graduated, moved to Manchester, and worked their arses off to save for the deposit on a business loan, originally leasing the space that was now, 10 years on, owned by the duo. Atelier was both of their pride and joy. And while their parents were not so sure on the focus of their club, they were certainly proud of their success. Thanks to Lily's ability to see the chessboard 10 steps ahead, they had a profitable business that let them both live more than comfortably, the memory of living on beans and toast in their bedsit far away. You're that confident? That, and I'm fucking sick of getting Ty from across the road for tea every night. They both laughed at the shared sentiment, and Lily's smile turned shark-like. So you're in? 6 months, Remus stated, even though he knew if his partner had it her way, he would be eating his words. Besides, if we have a functioning kitchen, then we can open for lunch and market it to the members as a perk. Lily trailed off, eyes glinting as she spoke of their most profitable business development. They had shared a similar negotiation 7 years ago, when the club began turning a healthier-than-expected profit, and Atelier's reputation became known in the North as the go-to kink club. Remus's idea to renovate and open up the top 2 floors to fee-paying members to be able to spend the night was one that came to him after a conversation with a particularly effusive guest, and it had led to an expansion of the business so successful neither of them could really believe it. Now, Atelier had 12 guest rooms, 8 of them currently assigned to customers who paid an eye-watering annual fee and underwent strict background checks for the privilege. It wasn't advertised, more of an invitation-only basis, which made Remus's working-class blood tingle in his veins. It was less about the exclusivity and more about safety. By making the high-level memberships invitation only, they could keep track of their guests' conduct and ensure no one was playing in an unsafe manner under their roof. Of course, another 2 of their guest rooms belonged to Lily and Remus, both for when they found a playmate and when they worked too late, were too tired to make the trip across the city. So what? We give the members free food? We could do free canapes. Maybe sides come complimentary? Lily bargained, and Remus was once again impressed by her. You've been planning this for a while, huh? He asked, voice tinged with mirth. She smirked at him, pushing up from behind the desk and moving around the room to lean over his. You know me, Ree. When I want something, I'm already a step ahead. With that, she span on a heel and moved towards the door at a leisurely pace, and he watched as her hips swung back and forth like a pendulum with practiced ease in her business dom attire. That usually consisted of a corset and a pencil skirt of some variety, and today's choice of bright purple silk and a pleated skirt with lace suspenders and patent Louboutin stilettos made her a straight boy's walking, talking, wet dream. That doesn't work on me, and you know it, Elle. But you'll still set up an advert for a bartender and a chef vacancy online, though, right? She threw over her shoulder. He sighed, even as he agreed, the smile she only ever really got to see gracing his face. I've set us up on Indeed with 2 vacancies, as commanded, Your Majesty. Remus spoke lowly in Lily's ear as he passed by her next to the stage, making his way to the bar. She smiled sweetly back at him, winking but not ceasing her conversation with one of their regulars. Remus hummed along to the slow bass of the music pulsing through the club as he crossed the room, waving once or twice and smiling at familiar faces but never stopping. Reaching the bar, he waved off the bartender that made to prioritize him over the other waiting customers. He preferred to wait, especially knowing that not everyone in the room recognized him as the owner. Where Lily went for business dom most days, Remus liked to keep it simple. Today, he'd chosen to wear what his friends lovingly referred to as his lazy professor attire, black slacks, gray button-up rolled up to his forearms, and a checkered sweater vest. It tended to disarm those who didn't know his true nature as a dom, and he enjoyed watching perceptions of him shift and change based on first appearances. As he surveyed the main floor, he took in the full booths and the handful of occupied tables. Not bad for a Thursday night. Recently renovated, Atelier was outfitted with a slick mahogany bar, the countertop facing the entrance and curving with the building, giving the bartenders a good vantage point to keep an eye on the clientele on quieter nights where there were less members of staff on duty. On the far side of the room, several booths of varying sizes were built into the space, each one outfitted with oxblood leather benches and gauzy black lace curtains, which gave the illusion of privacy. One remained empty. Lily and Remus's favored vantage point for watching the demonstrations which tickled their fancy. More tables filled the empty space in front of the stage, all accompanied by matching armchairs. Didn't expect to see you tonight. A low, familiar voice intoned, and Remus smirked in the low light as he turned to greet his companion. In my own club? His voice had taken on the low, gravelly tone that he'd come to associate with his dom persona. Well, sometimes you hide upstairs all night, and then I miss your company. The boy flirted, clearly dressed to impress, in his leather pants and plain white t-shirt. His red hair was pushed back from his face, his patented grin firmly in place as his gaze roamed over Remus. Fabian? Remus warned, his hand coming up to grasp the other man's wrist before it could find a place on his forearm. What? He whined, shifting closer from his spot leaned against the bar. Wasn't I good for you last time? You were, he agreed, tipping his head in thanks as one of the bartenders slid his usual drink across the surface to him, dropping the wrist in his grasp to bring the glass to his lips. But I told you then, and I'll remind you now, that I don't do relationships, Fabian. We agreed that it would be a one-time thing, and I intend to stick to that. Oh, he pouted, eyes widening in the dim light. And there's no chance you'd want a repeat show? Afraid not, love. You're welcome in the club, but that's where it ends. Shifting, he stood to his full height and made his way back to he and Lily's booth, settling back with his drink just as the lights dropped and the shibari demonstration began. Leafing through the pile of candidates still to be seen, Lily sighed and let her head fall back into the cushioned backrest of their private alcove. They had always conducted interviews on the main floor, before the club opened for the evenings. It made the practical, drinks-making part of the interviews flow easier. I staggered them on purpose so that we'd have time to talk between people. I didn't count on 2 no-shows in a row. Remus spoke apologetically, his body falling sideways to rest his head against Lily's, for once, clothed shoulder. Her interview attire was much more business than it was BDSM club, but she still had her signature pair of killer heels on, and he opened his mouth to comment on them just as 2 bodies fell through the lobby door into the club. Swearing softly, the smaller of the pair dusted himself off as he clambered back to his feet, tucking escaped wisps of hair behind his ear before he reached down to pull his companion up also. "We're so sorry we're late," the taller man exclaimed, rushing towards the booth, where Remus was rising to his feet and Lily had merely raised an unimpressed brow. "Our car broke down, you see, and then we couldn't find a contact number for this place. Oh, God, it's so unprofessional." "You're Sirius Black?" Lily cut the man off, eyes sweeping from his broad figure appreciatively, even as her expression remained stoic. If it weren't for the length of time he'd known her, he never would have clocked it. The man fish-mouthed for a few seconds uselessly before the one next to him took pity and stepped forward. "That would be me." He spoke softly, a blush adorning his cheeks as he took in the prospective employers. He was shorter than Remus by at least 5 inches, his head coming up to Remus's chin. Sirius's hair, pulled into an artfully messy bun, was shiny and looked thick, tendrils brushing his cheeks as he spoke. Reaching out his hand, Remus gave it a firm shake, graciously ignoring the clammy feel of his palm against another. He gave a small smile, which widened when the younger man blushed deeper, used to this reaction after 10 years of working as a dom in the industry, where he used to be unsure of his own level of attractiveness. Now he embraced others' reactions and used them to bolster his confidence. "These things happen," Remus spoke confidently, gesturing for the pair to join them at the table. "You're here to interview for the bartender position?" "He is," the other man interrupted, just as Sirius opened his mouth to confirm his question. "I'm James Potter, here for the chef position?" "Ah," Remus spoke, turning to look at Lily, silent conversations happening between them. "You're still going to interview them?" she asked silently, Remus rolling his eyes at her intolerance. "Why don't you take the chefy one to the kitchen and give him a go at whipping up something and see how it goes? I'll see this one's bar skills," he returned, his jaw pulsing at her raised eyebrow. "So, James," Remus continued, ignoring the pressure from Lily's stiletto on his toes, "if you'd follow Lily here into the kitchen, she'll be conducting your interview, and after there'll be a bit of a skills assessment." Agreeing, James rose quickly from his seat and shot a quick smile at his partner before following Lily into the kitchen, his broad frame dwarfing her as they passed through the bar. Sirius followed the other man with his gaze and a small smile before snapping his eyes back to Remus, blushing prettily at his distraction. "I'm Remus Lupin," he introduced himself. "Lily and I own Atelier together. We opened the club just over 10 years ago. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we would expect your job role to cover before I ask a few questions, and then there will be a small practical assessment, if that all sounds good with you." Yes. The smaller man trailed off, cheeks pink and lips between his teeth. "So, for starters, the bar is completely dry here." He gave a short laugh as Sirius's forehead creased into a confused frown. "We're a BDSM club. I'm uncertain if you were aware of that when you applied for the role." Yes, I was." Sirius blushed again, and Remus had to suppress a smile at the sight. This boy was a picture of innocence. "Okay, great. So, in order for all the play that happens within our club to be safe, sane, and consensual, something we pride ourselves on, we do not serve alcohol or allow intoxicated persons on the premises. We serve a range of zero-alcohol spirits, beers and wines, as well as soft drinks. Do you have a cocktail-making experience?" Remus asked distractedly, fishing Sirius's CV out of the pile of candidates to run his eyes over it briefly, humming when he sees an affirmative answer on the page. That's great. We do have a small cocktail menu, but we'd love to expand it. We like to give some creative freedom to our bartenders to create new staple cocktails to trial around the club. Our guests seem to enjoy the chance to try new things. It does great with the club's purpose, to be able to experience new things in a safe space. Most of the time, there would be a front-of-the-house staff on shift with you, so you wouldn't need to do much clearing of tables apart from cleaning down at the end of the night. There's also a dumbwaiter to send drinks to the guest suites upstairs. And there is always an attendant on shift for monitoring upstairs. On quieter nights, there's a chance that you'd be alone behind the bar while another member of staff took their breaks and vice versa. But generally, we operate with 3 bartenders on shift for the lion's share of opening times. You've worked as a bartender before at 2 different venues? Yes. For 3 years at my SU, part-time along with my studies. Sirius began, and Remus noticed he wasn't making direct eye contact, but instead staring at his forehead. It was uncommon for people to fixate on his facial scars, but he was also aware it was a common technique for those uncomfortable meeting eyes to avoid insulting others during conversations. A bit of a different clientele, I guess, but I enjoyed the work, and then once I graduated, I moved to the botanist, and that was a lot of cocktails for the last 9 months. Nodding, Remus made a note on his spare sheet of paper, looking up to meet the other man's eyes. Does the clientele bother you? Our guests come here to escape the outside world, and we don't tolerate our staff making people feel uncomfortable. No, it doesn't at all. Sirius jumped forward in his seat, hands now resting on the table and twisting together nervously. It's new to me, but I don't judge people as long as they aren't hurting anyone. At the quirk of Remus's brow, his cheeks pinked again. Unless they, wanted that. Amused but satisfied, Remus continued on, asking their standard interview questions until it came to the practical part of the interview. Standing, he flipped his notebook shut and gestured for Sirius to follow him. Leaning against the bar top, he waved his hand to indicate that Sirius should continue behind the bar. If you could make me a bramble, an old-fashioned, and then something of your own? If you can't find anything, just ask. There should be ice on the back bar next to the shakers. The fridges are just down to your left with garnishes inside. Should I just, Sirius asked, glancing around the bar to familiarize himself and taking note of the various non-alcoholic spirits along the back of the bar, the cocktail paraphernalia under the counter in front of him. By all means, Remus said, settling into silence, watching as Sirius carefully began first making the old-fashioned, finishing it with a flourish of a twist. Remus hummed satisfactorily as he tried the drink, hiding a smile behind his hand as the noise caused the younger man to miss the glass he was aiming to scoop ice into. When all 3 drinks were placed in front of him in a neat row, all on perfectly square napkins, Remus smiled and asked Sirius to describe his own cocktail to him. This is, actually a cocktail I created for James. He hates the taste of alcohol, and I found that a lot of the girls at the Union Bar echoed that sentiment. It has a gin base, Cointreau, and vanilla simple syrup, and is shaken over ice and finished with a spritz of lemonade, served in a short glass. If you guys had an herb garden, I would have added a sprig of rosemary to enhance the botanicals in the gin, but it functions well as is. Intrigued, Remus raised the glass to his lips, humming contentedly as the flavor spread across his palate. That's really lovely. I can see what you mean about the rosemary. It would balance the sweetness a little, yes? Nodding confidently for the first time in the 25-minute conversation, Sirius grinned broadly at Remus's enjoyment. That's what I love about creating your own drinks. Especially the more details you know about a person and their palate, you can really tailor drinks to individuals. I'm impressed, Sirius. Let's take these through to Lily so she can try them. If you'd grab a glass? Joining them behind the bar, Remus moved swiftly past Sirius, placing a gentle hand on the small of his back to ease the tight space. Leading him into the kitchen, he watched amusedly as James faltered in the middle of Lily's interrogation to meet Remus's eyes before he resumed his answer. How's it going in here? He asked as he approached the stainless steel pass. Leaning back against the wall, he propped one foot against the wall, eyes roaming in a calculating manner over Lily's body, meeting her eyes in an inquisitive smile. You're just in time, James exclaimed, radiating sunshine as he served several dishes onto the pass. They'd created an almost Master Chef-like secret box challenge, wherein they'd been to the market that morning and purchased a range of ingredients to see what the prospective chefs could come up with. Gesturing the pair forward, he handed them each a bundle of cutlery before he began explaining the dishes. So this is the bread that was already here, but I've done a crispy chicken skin butter to accompany it. The salty fat flavor really brings out the Moorishness of the sourdough. Is Moorishness a word? Anyway, then this is a pumpkin amaretti risotto with crispy pancetta and honey roasted parsnips. It's a little more dinner service than it is canapé, but I just love in-season squash so much. It's one of the easiest things to do, considering the time constraints. I could also turn the risotto into seasonal arancini if you were looking for a canapé-only offering. Remus moaned around the spoon of risotto, stifling a laugh when it made Sirius flush a deeper shade of pink and stumble over his feet, watching as James tried to smother his amusement into his shoulder. Lily hummed appreciatively, nodding as she agreed with James's comments on flavor profiles. We'd want the incoming chef to work with us to create the new menu. Is this something that you have experience in? I am, yes. My last restaurant, I was involved in the development of a new menu, although I wasn't the lead, and I develop our menu for dinner every week. James added cheekily at the end, glancing to the side and smiling wide at their other prospective employee. Excellent. Are these your cocktails, Mr. Black? Lily asked, lifting one from where it had been set down on the center island, trying it with a grimace. I've never been able to handle an old-fashioned, I'm afraid. That's more Remus's drink. Well, you can't expect everyone to have the same tastes, Sirius agreed hesitantly. If you're a sweet drink sort of person, then you may prefer the one at the other end. It's a cocktail of my own creation with gin, Cointreau, and vanilla simple syrup. Trying it, Lily gave a small smile to Sirius and nodded. That's more my speed, I must confess. Very nice. Great. Well, I think that's all we needed, Remus spoke, pushing off from the wall to stand to his full height, somewhat dwarfing both Lily and Sirius, although Lily's 5'2" height was helped by the added 5 inches of red-bottomed heel. We have a couple more people to see, but we should be in touch by Friday at the latest. That's great. Thank you so much for seeing us still, and again, we're so sorry for our tardiness. It really isn't like us at all. Sirius was very gracious in his thanking them, and an image of him on his knees slipped unbidden into Remus's mind. Smile dropping, Remus gestured them out of the kitchen and from behind the bar, bringing up the rear as James and Sirius both shook Lily's hand. Oh! Sirius suddenly exclaimed, spinning on his heel to face Remus. I actually had a question. The job advert had 17 pounds an hour listed for the bartender position? Yes, that's what all our bartenders start out on, because we have some private members there can be a lack of tips from time to time. Lily answered before Remus could open his mouth, and he brought a hand to her spine in thanks, so as not to interrupt her. Really? That's incredible. I guess we look forward to hearing from you then, Sirius responded, smiling wide and tilting his head to have some sort of silent conversation with James. Because that's what we pay our staff? Remus asked, amused and hoping for a final chance to fluster the man. His smile widened when the other man began to stutter, fingers twisted once again in front of his body. No, that's not what I... Don't worry about him, Lily smiled, nudging Remus with her elbow. He likes to wind people up, see how much they can take. And isn't that the truth? Remus thinks with a dirty twitch of his lips. Sirius POV. Sirius sighed, pulling up Indeed for the 4th time that week and starting a new job search. I need a job, Jamie. My bank account is barely alive, and I still need to pay you back for the rent this month. Oof, tell me about it, mate. Since Cord's closed last month, I've been hemorrhaging cash, and I'm pretty sure that my car is going to need to go in for a service soon. What a shit show. Slumping back on his best friend's bed, he scrolled aimlessly through the listings before stopping at a vacancy he hadn't seen before. Hey, Jay? Sirius asked, chewing on his lip like he always did when he tried to concentrate. Have you ever seen a club called Atelier in town? Address says Bloom Street? James choked on a sip of water, sitting up as he coughed out the liquid. Went the wrong way, sorry. Atelier is a kink club in the gay village. They looking for a bar staff? Looks like. And a chef, too, Sirius responded, skim reading the role description before sending his CV to the listed email before he could second guess himself. A kink club wasn't a place he'd ever ventured inside of his own accord. He was too shy to ever attempt such a thing. But James probably had. Is it, like a skanky place? No, they have really good rep, actually. I've been a couple of times to see some of the demos they do. James looked up from the screen with a wicked smirk plastered to his face. You might like it there, Siri. Could finally pop that cherry of yours. Get a nice man to show you the ropes, Flushing bright red at the double entendre, Sirius shoved at James until they broke into a tickle fight, laughing and kicking at each other until Sirius pleaded to be let go. It's not fair to trap me, he whined, pleading with puppy dog eyes as he snuggled into James's armpit. You're so much bigger than I am. You say that like it's hard to be taller than you. It's not my fault you stopped growing when we were 15. James teased, hauling Sirius up until they were face to face on the pillows and wrapping him up in his arms. Since they'd met at age 13, thrown together into a boarding school dormitory at Eton, they'd grown to be best friends and shared everything with one another. Coming from an uptight, intolerant family, Sirius had functioned like a robot for the first few weeks of school. That was until he realized that school could become a safe place for him, a home away from his abusive mother and apathetic father. James's upbringing could not have been further from his. Raised in a loving household where he was his parents' pride and joy meant he was an emotionally developed, fully functioning teen. If anything, the boy he'd met 9 years ago was a little too sure of himself. He'd managed to bring Sirius out of his shell, though. The summer after he'd turned 16, his mother beat him so badly that their housekeeper, Miss Morrill, had to drag him off the drawing room floor and sneak him out the front door with 100 pounds in cash and directions to the nearest tube. Their house being situated in central London was an advantage, and he'd taken the train from Sloane Square and made it to the hospital, and after he'd been fixed up, he had managed to convince a nurse to take him to the Potters. The boy's family had taken him under their wings straight away and welcomed him into their home. He had figured that he would have to drop out of school, but his parents had paid his fees silently, a move the Potters had decided was for appearance sake, to make sure the other wealthy families didn't cotton on to their eldest son no longer being a part of their family. They'd finished school with good grades, and when Sirius was accepted into the University of Manchester to read gender studies, and James had broken the news that he wanted to go to culinary school and apprentice to be a chef instead, things that Sirius had already guessed, really, the pair moved out of their dorm and into a tiny flat where they each, finally, had their own bedrooms and only had to share a bathroom. Which led them to now, where they had both finished school and had been floating on mediocre jobs that happened to come to an end within the same 3-week period. While they could ask James's parents for help, they had decided that they wanted to do everything they could to keep themselves afloat before they asked for handouts. Come on! Jamie, if we're late because you're fixing your fucking hair, I will kill you! Sirius whined at the front door, suit cleaned and ironed, his hair up in an artful chignon that he thought made him look professional and, most importantly, employable. Chill. We still have 45 minutes, Siri. James trailed off as he came around the corner, tying his tie with practice that came from years of public school attendance. When they finally made it to the street, Sirius rounded James's 2007 Fiesta, his pride and joy, and hopping inside, drumming his fingers on the dash as his fingers turned the keys in the ignition twice, thrice, before swearing out loud. So, we may have a problem, James spoke sheepishly, turning to look at Sirius with a worried frown creasing his forehead. You look up Atelier's phone number and I'll call the AA, okay? How do you think that went? James asked as they made it out of Atelier's front door, sidestepping a fast-paced businessman as they turned left, heading towards the tram stop the next street over. It was good, Sirius mumbled, blushing as they strolled, much more calm than their arrival had been. They seemed really nice as bosses, and Mr. Lupin was nice in the interview. Intimidating, but not really like he was trying to be, if you get me. Oh, I bet you thought he was nice, James teased, nudging him with a pointy elbow. You think I didn't notice how much he looked like your favorite Mr. Garfield? And those scars make his face look really interesting, in a rugged and handsome sort of way. Shut up, Sirius whined, unbuttoning his suit jacket as they walked and tucking his hands into his pockets so they could fist themselves together without James noticing. He looked like a fucking teacher, but a teacher I would maybe want to get on my knees for. Do you think he does the whole, BSDM thing? BDSM, babe. And yes, of course the owner of a kink club is into kink. He laughed, pulling Sirius's timid frame into his for a quick, on-the-move hug. I can't believe I just heard you say that. Holy fuck. They're gonna corrupt you in there. Did you see Lily? Oh my god. I've seen her in there before when I've been for demo nights, but I didn't realize she was an owner. Jesus, the dreams I've had about her fucking stilettos alone. As his eyes took on that glassy quality, which meant he was most definitely having a not-safe-for-work dream about his prospective boss, Sirius shoved him bodily around the corner, all too used to the way James's mind distracted him from the simplest things, like walking. Jamie? Sirius asked tentatively as the front door opened and closed again. Did you get a phone call while you were out? Grinning wide, James lifted his head from his phone screen and acknowledged Sirius. I did. You're looking at the new head chef for Atelier as of tomorrow morning. Sirius jumped up from the couch, pausing his show as he raced to hug his best friend. Oh, I'm so happy for you, Jamie. But you need to be happy for me, too. Is that right? James asked with a knowing smile, leading Sirius into their kitchenette area to grab a glass of water for the two of them. With a cheeky grin, Sirius nodded fast before exclaiming, I got the bartending position, too. Leaning back against the counter, James congratulated him before smirking. Mom and Dad are going to be so happy for us. You know she's been secretly plotting to get us both gigs at the golf club like we're 17 again. Shaking his head, Sirius let out a short laugh. He'd spent a good half an hour immediately after Miss Evans's call smiling at the blank wall in disbelief. A job that paid well, in an environment that seemed accepting and like the management actually cared about their staff. It was more than he'd allowed himself to hope for. And it was happening fast. They'd interviewed less than a week ago, and tomorrow he would be working a Saturday night shift on the bar of Manchester's premier kink club. God only knows how he was supposed to control his blush throughout the night. What with Remus Lupin and the world's hottest boss, and all the things he'd seen online about other kink clubs. He may be pure as snow, but his internet history really was not.